Now we're starting to record. Good. So it's a great opportunity to have this conversation, and I'm really excited about our guest today. Yesterday, I read a very interesting line, which is Gen AI is everywhere other than on the P&L. So when it really comes to economic value, financials, and so on, I think everybody is still struggling on what is really the impact of AI and how is it changing the way we look at assets, look at IP, and how we manage them. And I think we will have a huge, let me call it, redefinition of how what is IP, how we define it, how we create it, how we manage it. So we have a great speaker joining us today, somebody who's been in the field for years and years. And maybe the first question, Rasha, to you is, can you give us a little bit of background about your career and how you got into this and what you've been doing so far before telling us about how people today manage IP and what's changed for them in this new world of AI?
Well, thank you, first of all, for hosting me here on TAI Dubai today and for us to have this discussion. Pressure about talking about my journey, but I started out in actually business development and marketing for several years. And then I started working for an intellectual property agency in Dubai about 15 years ago. So it got me very interested in the laws of intellectual property, in that background, technicalities of how people creating, how inventions are happening, and how people actually own the rights to their inventions, and how they actually build value, monetize as they go along, whether it's a startup, whether you're an artist, a graphic artist, and musicians, and so forth. So I got really interested in this field, and I've been doing it since 2014, 2013, and really I've dabbled into it in terms of filing applications, looking at ways that we can look at IP portfolio and management of IP portfolio, dealt a lot with a lot of infringement cases, counterfeit cases as well. And then sort of switched my lens into looking at IP strategy and how it aligns with business strategy for startups, for businesses at the same time. And that's very important because it's sometimes an oversight and sometimes it's not thought of. But a healthy IP strategy is also important for businesses as you look at starting, even if it's mid-journey, even if it's mature, IP strategy is very important for the longevity of a company. This way, you're looking at how IP assets are going to mature, how you can actually gain value, and how you can actually monetize out of this intellectual property portfolio that you have. And really, I'm sort of very involved in tech. Like I'm an IT person, or I'm a geek somehow in my head. So really AI, I get anything that has to do with technology. And I'm now more than ever with artificial intelligence. It's really piquing my interest with regards to the IP, AI, what are the lines that are getting crossed, what are the gray zone areas, and what needs to happen for us to actually have a healthy relationship with IP and with AI as we're going along. So that's in a nutshell where I am right now.
Oh, thanks, Rasha. So I think with AI, things will change. When is AI a creator and when is AI a tool that assists a creator? And how do we view this?
If I just rewind a bit and just kind of talk about intellectual property just as a summary and what it is and how it actually is established. The rule of thumb, or how we look at intellectual property, it's whatever our minds create. So it's the creation of a human. It's not a creation of an AI-generated content. So when we're looking at intellectual property, so when we're looking at graphic artists that are creating designs, that are creating logos, musicians creating music and notes, inventors that are creating products or anything that has to do with machinery or manufacturing. These are patents, as an example, logos, trademarks. We're looking at copyright with regards to authors and with regards to musicians that are creating all of this great artistry. So the mind is creating it, therefore you can actually protect it as your rights, as your intellectual property rights. When we're looking at AI, and you're the authority on this, and we know that AI, and at the back end of it, it's built on volumes and volumes of data sets, of materials, of content that is potentially maybe public domain, which is available for everybody, but at the same time, it is potentially maybe copyrighted material. So when you're starting to create on AI, you have to be very careful in the sense of how much human interaction is happening with this AI tool or with this AI platform to be able to be deemed protectable in intellectual property. There is, in copyright laws, there is something called fair use. What is fair use, for example, for something that's created on on the artificial intelligence? There is 4 different rules with fair use to deem it okay to be used in AI, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's protectable. So there's a lot of gray zone areas, and I don't want to, kind of confuse as I'm going along, but there's a lot of sort of gray zone areas where does human stop in terms of the interaction with AI, and when does AI generate all this content, and where are the lines that are protectable? So we have to be very careful in terms of the input, and what is that output that could be potentially protectable? How much human percentage of interaction input has gone into creation of this invention, this app, this design, and so forth and so on, for it to be able to be protected.
Can we have an example of something that is co-created or created by AI, and start to understand where the boundaries lie? I remember when I joined IBM as a programmer, in my contract it was written that every piece of code I write is actually going to be the IP of IBM.
Right.
And I own nothing out of it, even if it's patented, even if it is commercialized. I get my salary and bonus, but the IP goes to IBM. A programmer today will probably put in 1/4 of a time that I used to put in, because they've got all these tools that help them. And they probably create code that's better, quicker, more efficient than the one I have. Talk us through the dynamics of this, and what does that mean for programming today? Who owns the IP? Who's benefiting from it? And what has changed, if anything?
A lot has changed, as you rightfully said. You went in and you wrote the code, and everything that was actually manually sort of, I would say, drafted, right? You had brainstorming sessions in terms of the group and what it is that you're looking at actually creating from that code, and what program you're looking at creating. With the AI right now, and that's all human creativity. That's all your learning in terms of what code works, the bug fixes, what doesn't work. You go back and you redo it and you reprogram it and you work with it. With AI, and like you said, everything is sort of done in maybe 1/4 of the time, because it's working on data sets that it's learned from already. The line is here, or the line that will differentiate between something that could be protected in intellectual property or generated by AI, is the amount of human input that's going into the output of this code. What are the prompts? How much interaction? How much input that's going by a human going into this particular platform that is generating this AI content? Because again, it's going back and it's taking it from data sets that it's learned from, and it's available, in the brain of that AI, correct? It's still a very gray zone area, Bashar, and I don't necessarily have a definitive answer for you, but we have to be very careful about how and what we decide to prompt the AI with regards to code, with regards to creation. And it's deciding factors that are still we're working on them with regards to IP policy, of what will be deemed, sort of protectable with regards to a patent, with regards to a code, with regards to an app. If you just simply put a prompt in a chat GPT and say, please, create for me an app that does this, 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 and it creates the whole app, and then you're on the market within 24 hours. You cannot protect this because that is solely created by AI. That's like 100% protected by AI. All you did is created by AI. All you did is just give it a prompt. But when there is more involvement from a human perspective into the input that's going into AI, then it becomes a little bit more interesting with regards to protectability of it in an intellectual property format.
I think this takes us to the question, is AI a tool or a creator? I feel it's a tool. And that's where I would argue I would have the rights for that output because I used the tool to help me build it, yeah? So when I put a prompt in ChatGPT and a piece of code comes out, I compile it and I can sell that intellectual property as mine because it's a tool that worked for me. If you go in and put a similar prompt and it gives you an identical one, then it's a tool that helped you as well. And I cannot protect that one as mine because I use the tool, and somebody else can use the tool in the same way. Compilers have been there for many years. Computers have been there for many years. So I would really define this as a tool and maybe keep the rest of the structure as it is today. Of course, probably that's a simple conversation when we talk about coding, but there was this big law case between OpenAI and New York Times.
Yes.
Now, New York Times has all these articles and all this content that's only really it's IP'd for New York Times, and people pay to get access to that content. Apparently, OpenAI did not declare that it is a computer that's trying to use this to train and build a business, because I think the terms and conditions allow you to consume this content either as a person or an organization, but not to create a business. What's the story there, and is there any merit in the OpenAI New York Times discussion on IP laws and infringes?
There's a great merit in that. And also, I will also mention the other case, which was a bunch of authors that sued also Anthropic, which is the platform that has Claude, which is very similar also to ChatGPT. The essence of both is that the users or the people that file the suit against, let's say, the Anthropic, are claiming that that Anthropic used copyright material that is not licensed to be used, for example, with that particular platform, and that they are commercially gaining out of the content of these authors without being permitted, without even paying royalties back to these authors. So what happened is that with this particular case, the authors were not able to prove that Anthropic is using this material in fair use. And it's the same thing with the case with potentially OpenAI in terms of, is it fair use to use this material? Am I gaining commercially out of this material? Or is it transformative? What we mean by transformative is that, are we using it for educational purposes, for not promotional purposes, but more of commentary purposes? The data sets or the information and the material that is being fed into the AIs is being transformative in the sense it's generating new material. So therefore, it's deemed fair use. Therefore, these particular lawsuits don't have, or the authors that were suing, let's say, Anthropic, didn't have merit against that. But it's also a very fine line of how to prove fair use against non-fair use as well. So copyrighted material that is used without authority, in my book also, there needs to be some sort of permissions that it should be, taken. But if it's solely just taken as public domain, that's also, there's something, something not right about it being used at the same time. Again, because of AI and the rapid growth of it, the laws are not keeping up with it because there's no new policies that are being put in place because it's so ever changing day by day and, minute by minute, I would say. So there are merits to certain IP laws that are being put within these cases. But at the same time, it's still just a fine a line that's still not, it's not clear. And the laws in the US differ from the laws in the EU at the same time. So everyone is working on different laws that govern IP with the interactions with AI. So I would say this space is to stay tuned and to see what happens with it at the same time, because there's more cases that are going to come up as well.
Rasha, you mentioned different jurisdictions and different laws and complete chaos around the world.
Yeah.
I just read something that South Africa allowed a patent for something created by AI. Is that true?
I have not, you see, there's so much happening that I did not know about this one. I know about other things that are happening, but not this one.
So in general, patents today are only registered in names of persons or companies, but nothing in the name of
AI.
So we've created so much confusion that our viewers now want some guidelines and they want to understand, what do they need to do? We're all in the digital business. We're all writing software. We're all creating content. We're all using AI to become more efficient, more effective. What's the right approach for founders and startups and entrepreneurs in general to make sure that they are doing the right thing, they're protected, nobody will come one day and sue them or make claims of infringement, and vice versa. Nobody will actually abuse their IP and not compensate them fairly for that. What should we do?
The first thing I would always advise is for us to be very proactive in the use of AI, in the sense of question, screen. First of all, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to create? What AI tools am I going to use? And be proactive in learning about the licenses or the terms and conditions of these particular AI tools. Be very vigilant in terms of potentially the laws of IP governing this particular tool, for example, or what it is that you want to create. So it's basically sitting back and saying, okay, what is it that I want to create? What is it that I want to do? What tool I want to use? Terms and conditions, very important. Even when you're using open AI sources, there are terms and conditions depending on what platform you're using for open AI. Even when it comes into AI, so you take something from open source, you put it into AI. So there's a lot of different platforms that are being used here, and don't use them passively. No, learn about what it is with the terms and conditions, because it will spell out what the intellectual property clauses is. Just like, when you started with IBM, your agreement, your contract said that your IP is owned by IBM. So learn and educate yourself in terms of these terms and conditions and what it is that you're looking at doing. And what are the markets that you want to grow into as well? Because IP laws, yes, they're universal in general, but there are certain nuances to certain jurisdictions. As we said, in the US, they operate differently than the EU. And that goes for intellectual property in general, not just necessarily only for AI-generated material. So even with the AI platforms, read the terms and conditions. So there's a lot of sort of your own work that you need to put into before you actually venture into just sending a prompt into AI, or using even confidential material. Be very careful about that with AI, because as soon as it gets into AI, it's public domain. If it's something that's confidential, if it's something that's important, make sure that you're not putting it into something that is learning from it at the same time. There's a case where someone held a trade secret. The trade secret is a form of an IP asset, like a recipe, for example, for KFC or for Pepsi. for some reason, he puts things into, I think it was ChatGPT, and he puts something that is a trade secret. That's not necessarily a good thing to do. So you have to be very careful about the use and how you use also AI, even with inventions. So as soon as you put it into AI, if you're looking at a patent, if you're looking at something, read the fine lines, read what these terms and conditions say, so you know exactly where you are. And also, of course, get advice from experts that know what the laws are and what direction to go through or by. We tend to feel like we know everything, but we don't necessarily know everything. So it's also good to kind of get advice and consulting from someone that also is able to go that route with you. And just it's such a new area, especially with AI, that reading a lot of these policies that are becoming also, apparent in different jurisdictions is also, I would say, important, especially if you're running a business and especially if you're going into business. Knowing is much better than not knowing, and that's going to help a lot of people from, going in the wrong, or at least being aware of certain things that are happening with it. As you said, with South Africa, Denmark just passed a law that citizens can copyright their voice, their body, and their face. And any AI platform that is going to mimic or copy any of these three things are going to be sued by that particular person to ask them to take it down, or for even financial damages. So different rules, different countries with the emergence of AI are taking into account the ethical side of it as well, and the liabilities that can actually, happen with these things. So I would say proactiveness in use, especially if you're running a business, especially if you're a designer. Just a couple of days ago, also, I don't know if you're familiar with WeTransfer, which is, it's a program that you can transfer file with. They changed their terms and conditions, saying that anybody that's sending any files through WeTransfer, these files can be used to teach their LLMs as well. So there was an uproar and a backlash from users saying, but this is sometimes intellectual property. This is my own work. How are you going to take it from your terms and conditions written in the terms and conditions? How are you going to use it to teach your LLM? So there was a huge backlash where WeTransfer actually reversed it and corrected those terms and conditions. So again, the market is learning as we're going, but just being aware and educating yourself with the means that you have also.
Wow, that's a great example. So I need to be careful every time I put something on WeTransfer that it doesn't have any IP or something that I want to use. So you mentioned you can protect your identity, your face, your voice, and all that stuff. But that also means that you can make money out of these things, yeah? So maybe you allow people to use these images or these voice bites, but immediately they will have to pay you for that usage, yeah?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially. And I think in this digital economy, we will work in a world, if I imagine 10 years, 20 years from now, a lot of us will make money because of IP. We are in the business of creating IP. We are in the business of consuming IP, and that's going to be more and more and not less. This is why it's so important for founders and entrepreneurs to understand this. Today, it might be a small part, or some people might consider it irrelevant or unimportant. But I'm looking at the questions from the chat. And by the way, we've got people from India, we've got people all around the world. So I think this is a good message that these virtual events are really expanding our reach. So a question that we have here, Rasha, what is the threshold? How much is enough? Where do we start and where do we end? You can be obsessed with this thing and probably not even go to Facebook or go to LinkedIn or something like that.
In terms of threshold, in terms of IP versus AI,
Yes.
or in terms of the whole, the combination of both?
The combination of both. How much do we spend on this? How obsessed should we become with
I
understanding
don't think
IP?
I don't think it's a matter of being obsessed. I think it's a matter of just educating yourself on principles and on how AI operates, especially if you're running or if you're trying to create something with it, or if it's part of your business. At the end of the day, it's going to be the bloodline for your services or for the products that you are generating, correct? So I think being aware and educating yourself with that particular product or the AI tool that you have is going to be very important. I'm not saying, I don't know everything, and I don't know what's happening in the world as it is. There's so much happening. I think being sort of just focused on what it is that you're looking at producing is going to be a good starting point for that with regards to AI and IP.
Okay, so this question came from Priya. She's in Florida, in Tampa Bay, and she's kind of clarifying what's the threshold of human input for it to be ownable, for the IP to be ownable?
That's a question that's still being discussed in terms of how much human percentage input that's going into it, and depending on what it is that you're looking at creating. If you're looking at one of these AI platforms where you're telling it, I want to create a logo or a graphics to give to a client, and you just say, okay, do circles and do squares, is that really human interaction? And how much is it, right, of that interaction? And then all of a sudden the AI is creating that whole logo for you to send to the client. That, for me, is generated by AI. All I told it is just to create a circle and a square. And it did the whole creation and the creativity side of it. So if you go in with saying, no, it's a square with this, with that, giving it an explicit description of what your logo must look like, then there might be sort of that line where you say, okay, no, you know what? You have actually explicitly designed it in your head, and you're just asking AI to actually create it for you, as an example. So that's where sort of the differentiating point would be in terms of how much input you're putting into this AI tool for it to create that for you. And then I'll just add that one point. And if it's AI that's just creating the graphics for you and you're turning around giving it to the client as their IP, there is also that line that you need to be very careful with, because if this is AI generated and they go to an office for it to be filed and registered as a trademark, it might not be, because it's not human created, it's an AI creation. Again, depending on the input and how much explicit details we're giving that AI to generate.
Thanks, Rasha. I want to kind of show people how important this is, yeah? Again, going back to the IBM example, IBM is the company with the most patents on earth. They do something like 8,500 patents every year. IBM, I don't know, makes an annual revenue out of the royalties, $6 or $7 billion a year. That's pure profit, yeah? There's nothing that goes into it. And they've sold many of these IPs to many other vendors. So this is a big business. This is a very profitable business. And I feel as we go more into the digital economy, we will live off these patented IPs and selling royalty. I've got a question here from India. So this is becoming an international podcast.
I love that.
So how can we protect AI algorithms if it's based on open source models or public data sets?
I've alluded to that. Again, I'm not an expert in open source, but if you're looking at open source, you get the MIT, you got the Apache 2, you got the General, the GPL. These are open source platforms that are used to create something. But within those particular platforms, there are different restrictions and limitations to what is actually considered open source and what you can actually generate from that. So what I would suggest you do is you read these terms and conditions. You look at what are the restrictions and limitations depending on the platform that you're using. You also do that with the AI, especially when it comes to intellectual property and especially when it comes to algorithms, because algorithms can be protected as copyrights. And when you own the algorithms to something as a copyright, then you can actually license that algorithm if you want to in the future. So be very sort of vigilant in terms of what are these limitations, restrictions that are in the open source and whichever platform that you're using. And at the same time, with that of the AI as well. It's, we have to do our own homework and our own research as well as we're getting into business and as we're trying to create something to be, to have a command of what it is that we're creating. Not just necessarily, as I said, not just passively saying, okay, create this for me, basically.
Thank you, Rasha. Sania, I don't know where you're from. You haven't put it in, but you've got a great question. Sania is saying, I'm a filmmaker. She's in Dubai, so at least somebody is in Dubai. I'm a filmmaker. We use tech to optimize our process. We're working on creating 70,000 films. Until now, our rights are relatively clear. Can you tell us, in an era when data and content scripting is norm for AI companies, what will happen to my IPs?
Can you just repeat the second part? Sorry.
Can you tell us, in an era when data and content scripting is norm for AI companies, what will happen to my IP? Scraping, sorry.
Okay, so it's, you mean in an AI-generated world where scripts are being scraped or content is being scraped? Is that the question?
I think it is.
Yeah. Yes. So it's going to go back to the same sort of scenario with these authors that sued Anthropic. They sued Anthropic for use of copyrighted material without permission. It's how strong, you are in terms of being vigilant about what's happening with your content. How are they scraping it? Again, Anthropic is taking public domain material, even copyrighted material, they're purchasing it, which becomes legal. So you have to just be careful. Again, do your homework, look at what the AI is doing with that material in order for you to decide what you want to do with the material that's being scraped. There's no escape from it, I think. We're going to get to that point, but it's just a matter of what are the policies that are going to be put in place? What are the regulations that are going to be put in place from lawmakers that will govern that side of things? As it is right now, we're still learning as we're going, and that's why you have all of these cases springing up, and each decision is different than the other. And countries are putting different policies in place. So I think it's just being vigilant about what's happening and just kind of reading the policies of what's becoming law, new law in the era of AI. Because again, it's unprecedented. There's nothing that happened like this before. So it's just a matter of, again, being educated about what's happening.
So thank you, Rasha, for your brutal honesty. That's good. Thank you very much. So Rasha, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a startup. I'm in this business. Other than going and reading thousands of documents with fine print here and there, what's the right way of going about it? And I don't want to give you a platform to make any advertisement for your business, but what's a typical engagement model? What should a startup or an entrepreneur do in order to get professional advice?
I think first of all is sit back. Okay, what is the project I'm working on? What is it that I'm looking at producing? What is it that I'm looking at creating, right? If there is some available information out there, make use of it. It doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of information or, material that you have to read through it. What is that idea that you have? What is it that you're looking at creating? And then fill in the gaps. What is it that I'm looking at actually? What is it that I don't know that I need to know? Intellectual property should be actually on the forefront of every business entrepreneur, every startup, because again, it's a way to protect all your work and hard work and effort that's going into intellectual property. It gives you rights that you can enforce, that you can maintain, and it gives you rights that you can be able to gain value and monetize. So intellectual property is very important. Read about it, learn how that's going to affect your creation or your creativity. You do not have the time to do that, consult with experts in these fields, and not just necessarily experts in IP, but experts in also the business strategy of what you're looking at doing, and aligning it then with the expert with IP, with an IP strategy. It's only sound business advice that I would give anybody, even if I was not into IP. It's just a matter of what is it that you're looking at doing, and I need to actually put a list of what it's exactly that will feed into this creation. So it can be profitable, it can be potentially successful, it can be, I'm looking at growth. We all get into business to actually get to grow and to be successful, right? So I think a little bit of time spent on that creation part is very important. And then you seek help from people or experts. Yes, do that at the same time, because it'll be easier than reading through,
Is
materials.
it easy to get commercially? Is it feasible for a startup to engage with an expert on this? Are there templates that people can look at? How and where do they start? I think most of these startups today, they feel if they want to do justice to this very important topic, it's going to cost them an arm and a leg, and costs are prohibitive. Is there a more efficient way of doing it? Is there an LLM somewhere that we can ask and get better and cheaper advice?
There's a lot of IP experts there that will give, obviously, complimentary consultations in the beginning to put you on the right sort of path in terms of what it is that you need to look for and what it is that you need to actually gain. And in some cases, what are the budgets that you're looking at, depending on what it is that you want to do. And I would, sort of advise into going that route. Aside from that, LLMs are there also to help us, right? I love AI, but I also look at it from the IP perspective, right? And what, the whole disruption that's going on with IP. But AI is becoming a part of everybody's life. So yeah, take advantage of that, but also question it, because even in ChatGPT, they tell you at the end, not everything is accurate, so check the information. But it's a good introductory way for you to actually gain some knowledge with regards to IP in a very basic format. It gets a little bit, more, I don't want to say challenging or complicated, but when you engage with experts, they'll tell you about the jurisdictions, they'll tell you about what is expected. They'll tell you that, patents have to be distinctive and novel. They cannot be, advertised and promoted. You might find that in the LLM, but when you're speaking also to an expert, they're going to give you some more information as to the projects that you're dealing with. But resources are available out there, from LLMs to IP offices, to, IP experts that, can also assist that. Budgets are going to be very, and like you said, cheaper. When you're going into business and you also want to do that, that's why I'm saying IP should be one of the first things that you think about, because it needs to be a line item also in the budget and the business plan that you have, so to account for it in the future.
Okay, I think that makes sense. Another question that just came up, this time from India. What are the pros and cons of keeping our AI tech as a trade secret versus filing a patent?
That would need a whole different meeting and a whole different discussion, because again, it's not something I could discuss it without knowing the details of it and how all of the inventions, or basically the AI tool, has been created. So that's a discussion. So it's not something that is easily discussed or saying yes or no. Lots of details with IP.
Let's share the basics. So I'm a Dubai-based entrepreneur. I'm producing IP. It's software, it's content, it's video, it's films. And I'm registering it in Dubai, but I know it's being consumed globally. What's the strategy here? What should I do?
The strategy here is looking at it from a business strategy and aligning it with your IP strategy. Which markets are you going to launch into? Which markets are going to be your biggest as well, to be able to go there and protect your particular IP assets? Trade secrets versus a patent, that's again something that needs a little bit more discussion. Trade secrets are something that remains confidential because it's not necessarily deemed to be patentable. Patent rules need to be, again, novel, unique, and nobody else has actually invented it, as an example. Trade secrets are secrets that govern your business and make that product operate. So these are some of the distinctions, to answer that first questions in terms of trade secrets or patents. But again, these are the basics for that. But then there's going to be a little bit more detail to be able to establish which is which. Which markets you go into is basically pure business strategy or forecasting of where this particular software, let's say, is being downloaded or being used. What are the markets that you're going into? Where are your consumers, basically? And you model that, and that's where you need to protect your IP assets.
Another question coming up here, Ashish, can we have a closed AI LLM system which will not put out IP information into the public domain?
That's a very technical question.
I can answer.
You can answer
Ashish.
that one.
Yes.
For me,
Ashish,
I have the IP
yes.
side of it, but
Yes.
go ahead.
Many organizations, most organizations today have a knowledge management system using large language models. They install it on their premises. They don't give it access to the global platform. So you can go to OpenAI or any of the other ones and you get your own local instance. You feed it with the information. You only consume the information that you fed into this, and it will not exchange with the external world. So the biggest opportunity for large language models today, I mean business opportunity, is exactly this. People are creating knowledge management systems for their businesses, for their organizations that should not be open, put out there in the open domain. So yes, this is a big business opportunity and it exists. Another question.
From an IP perspective of that, again, what are the limitations and restrictions of the OpenAI? And yes, it's a closed LLM for you. And what is the key IP assets that are within these elements that actually can be protected? And this would be more of a detailed discussion, looking at algorithms, copyrights, names of this particular, software, for example, or this program as trademarks. So those are the differentiations with that.
Great. Another question from India. As a student, when we get any idea or something we think of as a solution, does brainstorming it with AI make it less my idea or reduces the chances of me making it my IP?
Yes, because you're feeding it into a public domain and a learning mechanism that's going to be learning these particular ideas. And once again, this is what I mentioned earlier. Be careful about what you're sharing with any of these particular LLMs, because again, it becomes public domain because it is learning from all of the information that we're inputting into it. It's also learning your tone and your style when you're using it. So it will learn from any ideas that you're feeding into it. And in the future, if it's something that you're looking at potentially maybe patenting, it might be a problem because it becomes public knowledge. It becomes in the public domain. Anyone can, it's learning from it. It's reproducing it in different formats, not necessarily the same format, but reproducing it in different formats. So it becomes less unique and less distinctive. So just be careful about what you're sharing as well and how confidential and private it is.
Thanks, Rasha. Here's a great question from Sonia. She's saying, my question is simply to hear your thoughts on the new classification system launched by the Emirate of Dubai, reportedly first in the world or a world first, which shows a level of AI tech used in a piece of research or content through 5 simple labels. I read about it yesterday in a LinkedIn post. Have you heard about this?
I have not heard about it, no.
Okay. So maybe it's in the Q&A. We can have a look at it and maybe you can post the answer.
But in terms of classifications, in terms of intellectual property, or in terms of how to govern the AI?
I think you kind of need to give a level of how much AI was used when you did research and content creation. And there are probably 5 labels, a lot and little and somewhere in between.
So it's more of governing AI,
yes,
potentially.
So I would assume you write a piece of code and you say, this has been entirely written by AI, or 50% or 10 or 20 or something like this. And based on that, probably this will be some kind of an early governance model.
Governance, exactly.
Dubai is trying to lead the world with.
Absolutely. So yeah, the other thing too, which is another factor, is that there has to be governance with regards to AI and how we're dealing with it for it to start building a bit of structure around intellectual property and also the usage and business and how you're using it in an ethical also way for countries and for companies. So I'll take a look at that as well. Excellent.
Going back to Ashish and the closed and open system, can the closed system be done for a small enterprise? Is it feasible? Again, there are so many offers out there and so many people who are in this business. Ultimately, it's about getting the right commercial engagement, and depends on what you mean feasible. I tend to change the question. What is it that I'm trying to protect and how valuable it is? If I'm trying to protect something that's extremely valuable, then I'm sure it's feasible. If I'm trying to protect information or data that's not really valuable, then definitely it's probably from an ROI point of view, not worth it. Yeah. So it really goes back into what is it you're trying to protect. Another question from Shruti. Shruti, are you in India or Dubai or America or Europe? Anything else you'd like to add on the ambiguity of AI-generated content, which everyone using AI to generate all kinds of content? Do you expect there to be a model collapse? This is from Hyderabad in India.
I will say my thoughts on this, and I'm sure you have thoughts on this. I don't think the models will collapse. If anything, they're evolving in different ways, and I think it's a matter of how we use it and what we use it for is going to be important. But I don't think there will be a collapse with AI. I think it's how we're going to be operating from now on. So being, again, knowledgeable in what we're doing and how we're doing it is going to be important from an intellectual property and from our daily usages as well. So that's sort of my take on it. I don't think it will collapse.
Good. So this is now the last question from my side. I know we've got 3 minutes, but we need to move into a world where we need to think of AI, not what AI can do, as you've just mentioned, that it can do a lot of things for us, but to what AI can be.
Right.
AI can be a tutor, a teacher, a friend, but it also can be a spy, it can also be a bully. So how does that fit into the world of IP? If I'm dealing with an AI tutor, or I'm dealing with an AI call center operator, or I'm dealing with an AI agent that's doing something on my behalf, how does IP fit into this conversation, if at all? Maybe you tell me not at all, forget about it.
Again, it's if we take it against the IP laws that exist now, everything that AI is doing is not protectable, or most of it, I would say a high percentage. I think with the AI emergence, it's shaping up new IP policies and IP laws. Therefore, in a couple of years, IP, I think, will look a little bit different than what it looks right now. And it's starting to, right? Let's say the Denmark rule with people being able to protect their voice, body, and face, right? So what is happening right now is that we're in that era of, okay, let's watch what's happening and let's try to adapt these IP laws so we can protect people's creations and protect these IP call centers, for example, for the people that are creating them, because it seems that that's the direction we're going into. At the moment, if we're looking at it, most of these AI-generated content, fully generated by AI, for example, or even at 90% or 80%, are not protectable because, again, IP, creation by human, That's how we're looking at it, and that's how it's looked at. With AI coming into the equation, maybe there is an AI IP model that's going to be put into place as well. So that's what everybody's working on as well.
Amazing, Rasha. This is a fascinating conversation. It hopefully sets the groundwork for a lot of change and transformation in the future. Really want to thank you for being with us and then being so generous with your input. I'm so impressed with this workshop because we touched people from India to the US, and I feel it's a great format to engage the Thai community, not only in Dubai, but globally. So thanks a lot, Rasha.
Thank you for having me. It was a great discussion. Yes,
You're-
the answers are not there 100%, but at least we're having that discussion, to kind of pinpoint some of these areas that we need to look at.
Absolutely. And back to you, Cicely. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasha. Thank you, Bashar. The questions are still coming in. There's people from Nigeria as well.
Welcome, Nigeria.
Yeah. So there is a short survey. We are very keen to know how interesting and relevant these webinars could be for you. So we'd love to hear your feedback. So I think it gets sent out once you complete. So do make sure you sign it so that we can plan and do more of these events that are valuable. And always please share your suggestions because we build for the community. Thank you to everyone who joined in from all over, literally. And thank you, Bashar. Thank you, Rasha. Thank you, Bianca.
Yeah.
He's our events messiah, but is in the background. And thank you to the team as well from Thai Dubai. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.